Red Bull just presented the most important car in their history, and immediately after the cameras stopped rolling, the team's confidence collapsed. Verstappen didn't celebrate. He didn't talk about wins. He warned about problems. And what he said, off script, has people inside the paddock seriously worried. Because what's behind the RB22 isn't just a new car. It's a risk, one that could backfire badly. And the real problem? The FIA already knows, but they're saying nothing. And what's now starting to leak could change everything we thought we understood about Red Bull's 2026 season. Detroit wasn't just a launch, it was a performance. Red Bull picked the city for a reason. It's Ford's territory. This was their moment to declare independence, to tell the world, we don't need Honda anymore. They brought the lights, the music, the perfectly choreographed PR machine. Verstappen, Ricciardo, the executives, all there, smiling for the cameras. The RB22 stood on stage like a weapon, sharp, futuristic, unmistakably aggressive. But the real car? The one they'll race in Bahrain? It wasn't there. What they showed was a show car. A shell. And behind it, the real story was already starting to unfold. Because inside the garage, away from the stage, the tone was different. The engineers weren't relaxed. The energy wasn't triumphant. It was tight, controlled, nervous. And then Verstappen spoke. He didn't follow the script. He didn't say the engine felt strong. He didn't talk about domination or legacy or momentum. He said this: none of us really know what this new car or engine will do. We'll probably spend more time in the garage than on track during the first test. For a driver like Max, who rarely gives away anything, that statement hit like a warning. Not to fans, to the paddock. And what followed confirmed it. Several Red Bull engineers left Detroit the next morning. Not to celebrate, but to return to Milton Keynes. To work. Because whatever they saw in the final pre-launch dyno data, it wasn't good enough. Not for a team fighting for titles. Not for a car carrying a brand new engine. And not for Verstappen, who now finds himself at the start of a season, driving into more uncertainty than he's faced in years. And the people around him? They know it. Detroit wasn't just a launch, it was a performance. Red Bull picked the city for a reason. It's Ford's territory. This was their moment to declare independence, to tell the world, we don't need Honda anymore. They brought the lights, the music, the perfectly choreographed PR machine. Verstappen, Ricciardo, the executives, all there, smiling for the cameras. The RB22 stood on stage like a weapon, sharp, futuristic, unmistakably aggressive. But the real car? The one they'll race in Bahrain? It wasn't there. What they showed was a show car. A shell. And behind it, the real story was already starting to unfold. Because inside the garage, away from the stage, the tone was different. The engineers weren't relaxed. The energy wasn't triumphant. It was tight, controlled, nervous. And then Verstappen spoke. He didn't follow the script. He didn't say the engine felt strong. He didn't talk about domination or legacy or momentum. He said this: none of us really know what this new car or engine will do. We'll probably spend more time in the garage than on track during the first test. For a driver like Max, who rarely gives away anything, that statement hit like a warning. Not to fans, to the paddock. And what followed confirmed it. Several Red Bull engineers left Detroit the next morning. Not to celebrate, but to return to Milton Keynes. To work. Because whatever they saw in the final pre-launch dyno data, it wasn't good enough. Not for a team fighting for titles. Not for a car carrying a brand new engine. And not for Verstappen, who now finds himself at the start of a season, driving into more uncertainty than he's faced in years. And the people around him? They know it. The problem isn't just the engine. It's what's happening when the engine is meant to run at full capacity, and doesn't. Red Bull powertrains promised reliability. They promised energy efficiency. They promised a clean, integrated hybrid system, capable of hitting FIA benchmarks from day one. But according to multiple sources, from within the testing team and the simulator crew, the engine isn't behaving the way it should. It starts fine. It revs. It deploys energy. But the moment it's pushed through a full race simulation, things begin to unravel. The battery drops faster than expected. Thermal output rises lap by lap. Torque delivery starts to fluctuate under partial throttle. And the engine, in simple terms, starts lying to the chassis. That's where the real danger is. Because the car doesn't just go slower. It goes unpredictable. And for a driver like Verstappen, who builds his entire driving style on precision, on knowing exactly what the car will do at every corner, every throttle input, every gear shift, that unpredictability becomes a deal breaker. You don't fight for a title with a car that doesn't repeat its behavior. Now, this isn't confirmed on record. No team principal is going to stand in front of the press and say, our engine's failing in simulation. But the signs are there. The hurried return to Milton Keynes, the extended simulation sessions, the increased Ford presence at the power unit facility, and Verstappen's tone, more cautious than we've ever seen during a launch. This isn't a performance tweak. It's a structural red flag. And the people around the project, especially those on the battery integration team, are already calling it a race against time. Because if they don't fix it before Bahrain, they don't just risk being off the pace. They risk falling apart in public, with Ford's name all over it. Inside Red Bull, no one is using the word crisis. Not yet. But behind the scenes, another word has started circulating. Accountability. Because if this engine isn't ready, if it fails under race conditions, someone will have to take the fall. And right now, no one wants to be the first to step forward. It's important to understand something about this project. Red Bull didn't just build a car. They built a powertrain division from scratch. Hundreds of engineers, custom-built facilities, a full vertical integration plan, from combustion design to battery software. And at the center of it was an unspoken agreement with Ford. Ford would back it, brand it, support it, but Red Bull would control it. It was Red Bull's engine, Red Bull's architecture, Red Bull's code. And that's why things are getting tense. Because now, with the hybrid system under-delivering, with the energy recovery loop inconsistent, with temperature spikes showing up in every simulation longer than 20 laps, Ford wants in on decisions, in on technical reports, in on who gets to fix what. And Red Bull? They're resisting. Because to them, this isn't just about a malfunction. It's about ownership. They don't want to hand over the keys to a manufacturer that's only been in the room for part of the ride. But here's the twist. Ford didn't sign on to this deal to be silent partners. They came for headlines. They came for innovation. They came to show the world that their tech can compete at the highest level. And now, just weeks before the first race, they're being linked to an engine that may not finish its first Grand Prix at full power. That's not just embarrassing. That's reputational damage. So they've started asking questions. Hard ones. Why was this cooling strategy approved? Who signed off on the hybrid map? Why are the dyno results misaligned with the on-track simulations? And most importantly, why didn't anyone say this sooner? Because from Ford's perspective, this looks like Red Bull took control, until it didn't work. And now, they're watching a title-winning team stall on a runway, with their logo painted across the fuselage. Here's what no one is saying out loud. Not in the press conferences, not in the interviews, and certainly not in the launch event in Detroit. Red Bull and Ford were never built to survive a problem like this. Because this partnership, for all the marketing, was based on something fragile. Mutual illusion. Red Bull believed they could run a full power unit program, like they run a race team. Fast, private, sharp-edged, no committees, no compromises. And Ford? Ford believed they were buying into proven dominance. They saw Verstappen. They saw the trophies. They saw the future of hybrid racing. And they wanted to be part of it. But what neither side accounted for was what happens when the plan doesn't work. Because the RB22 isn't just any car. It's the first full expression of Red Bull's independence. No Honda fallback. No external partner to take the heat. No buffer between the software and the stopwatch. And that's the part no one wants to explain to the public, or even admit internally. If this engine fails, it doesn't just expose a technical flaw. It exposes a structural one. It says that Red Bull, for all their success, might have moved too fast, too aggressively, too confident that winning races means you can build everything yourself. And Ford? They didn't sign up to be the ones holding the bag, if that confidence backfires. Because make no mistake, this isn't just a racing program for them. This is a corporate project, with executives, with quarterly reviews, with marketing budgets and global campaigns, built around one assumption, that this engine would work. And now, they're staring down the possibility that it won't. Not at full performance, not under race conditions, not in time for Bahrain. That's why Ford is escalating. Why more Detroit engineers are flying in. Why internal documents are being re-reviewed. Why people in charge of partnerships are suddenly talking like lawyers. Because this isn't about power units anymore. It's about alignment, about philosophy, about two companies who thought they wanted the same thing, until pressure exposed the gap between them. Let's start with Verstappen. He didn't leave Detroit angry, but he did leave unconvinced. And in a season like this, where the regulations are new, the engine is untested, and the margins are razor thin. That kind of uncertainty matters. Verstappen is not a driver who tolerates chaos. He can drive through it, sure, but he doesn't want to. He wants consistency. He wants predictability. He wants to know that if he pushes the car to the edge, it won't push back. And right now, the RB22 isn't giving him that. Not in the simulator. Not in the energy maps. And not in the early dyno logs that, according to internal sources, are still showing cooling thresholds higher than forecasted. Which means Verstappen's already adjusting. Not his driving. His expectations. He's recalibrating his mindset. Not for domination, but for survival. And that has consequences. Because if Verstappen starts losing trust in the engineering, he'll stop giving the benefit of the doubt. He'll start questioning strategy calls. He'll push harder in practice. He'll speak louder behind closed doors. And if results don't come quickly, he'll escalate. And he's not the only one thinking long-term. Red Bull's management knows that if this engine stumbles out of the gate, they won't get sympathy from the grid. They'll get pressure. From Mercedes. From Ferrari. Even from Audi, who are watching this unfold. With quiet intensity. Why? Because this isn't just about Red Bull's performance. It's about the entire FIA vision for 2026. Ford was the flagship manufacturer. The proof that new players could enter and compete. The signal that F1's hybrid future wasn't just for the old guard. If they fail? If Red Bull stumbles with the engine they built to prove their independence? Then the message shifts. And it shifts fast. Suddenly, it's not new era. It's cautionary tale. The FIA may face questions about whether the new regs are too aggressive, too complex, too reliant on hybrid balance at the expense of reliability. And Red Bull, instead of being the heroes of the reset, could become the warning sign. The caution flag for any team thinking about doing it all in-house. And Ford? They'll be watching every interview, every headline, every press conference where Christian Horner or Helmut Marko tries to explain why the most dominant team of the last decade can't match race pace in the opening rounds. Because reputations move quickly in Formula One. And right now, all it takes is one DNF to turn an ambitious engine program into a corporate liability. So now, everyone waits. The engine's sealed. The launch is done. The statements have been made. And still, no clarity. No confirmation that the battery issues are solved. No sign that the thermal imbalance has been fully addressed. No indication that Red Bull and Ford are pulling in the same direction. What we've seen so far is the surface, the presentations, the quotes, the carefully framed interviews. But what happens in Bahrain won't be scripted, because the moment Verstappen hits full throttle in FP1, every team will be watching, not just for lap time, but for behavior. Does the car stay stable through Sector 2? Does the deployment map stay consistent through Turn 10? Does the engine cool properly on the long straights? And if the answer to any of those is no, it won't take long before the questions start again. And this time, they won't just come from journalists. They'll come from inside. Inside Red Bull. Inside Ford. Inside the FIA. Where the technical directors know full well what failure in a flagship project could do to the credibility of the new era. And that's what no one is saying yet. That this might not be a Red Bull story. It might not even be a Verstappen story. It could become a regulation story. Did we push the rules too far story. Can new manufacturers actually survive in this formula story? Who takes the blame if this explodes kind of story? And if it goes there, this launch, this car, this engine, might just be the first chapter in something that Formula One is not ready to confront. Because when a team like Red Bull starts breaking down, people don't just look at the car, they look at the system. And if the RB22 fails to deliver on everything it promised, that system will have a lot to answer for.